The Unsettling True. Medical cases that inspired Mary Shelley to write. Frankenstein. In the summer of 1816, a 19-year-old girl sat in a villa on Lake Geneva and invented a monster. She had no university education. Women were not admitted to universities. She had no formal scientific training. She was travelling with her lover, who was not yet her husband, and his friend Lord Byron, who was arguably the most scandalous man in Europe. And what she wrote that summer was not Gothic fantasy. It was a meditation on real science, on experiments being conducted right then in the laboratories and anatomy theatres of Europe, on what it meant to create life and what responsibilities that creation might carry. Her name was Mary Shelley. The science was real, and it is considerably more disturbing than the monster. The summer of 1816. The summer of 1816 was known as the year without a summer. Mount Tambora in Indonesia had erupted the previous year, the largest volcanic eruption in recorded history, and the ash cloud had blanketed the northern hemisphere, dropping temperatures across Europe and America. June 1816 saw snow in New England. In Switzerland, the skies were grey and the weather relentlessly wet. Byron's villa, the Villa Diodati on Lake Geneva, was the gathering point for a remarkable collection of minds. Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, John Polidori, Byron's physician, and Mary Godwin, daughter of two of the most radical intellectuals of the age, Mary Wollstonecraft and William Godwin. She was 18 that summer. She was pregnant. Confined indoors by the weather, the group entertained themselves by reading German ghost stories aloud. Byron proposed a challenge. Each of them should write a ghost story. Most of the group produced little or nothing. Mary Godwin produced Frankenstein. She later described the moment of inspiration as a waking dream, a vision of a pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside a creature he had assembled from parts. She saw the creature open its yellow eyes. She felt the horror of what the creator had done. But where did the science come from? That is the question nobody asks. Galvanism and the reanimation experiments. The scientific world of 1816 was electrified, quite literally, by a series of experiments that would strike most modern observers as the work of either visionaries or madmen. In the 1780s, Luigi Galvani had discovered that applying electrical current to the muscles of dead frogs caused them to twitch and contract. He called it animal electricity and believed he had discovered the fundamental force of life itself. He was wrong about the mechanism but right about the significance. The experiments ignited a debate that would run for decades. Was life electrical in nature? Could it be restored by electrical means? His nephew Giovanni Aldini took the experiments considerably further. In 1803, at the Royal College of Surgeons in London, Aldini performed a public demonstration using the freshly executed body of a convicted murderer named George Forster. He applied galvanic current to the corpse. Forster's jaw quivered, his eye opened, his fist clenched, one leg kicked so violently it nearly left the table. The audience, composed of respected scientists and physicians, were reportedly so disturbed that one spectator died of shock. This is not legend, this is documented. Aldini's experiments were widely reported in the press. Mary Shelley almost certainly read about them. Percy Shelley was deeply interested in galvanism and discussed it with her. It is woven directly into the fabric of Frankenstein. The creature is not brought to life by lightning in the original novel. The method is left deliberately vague, but electrical vivification is the clear implication. The anatomy theatres. There is another layer to this that is even darker. Victor Frankenstein does not conjure his creature from nothing. He assembles it from parts. He visits charnel houses and vaults. He disturbs the tremendous secrets of the human frame. He collects the raw material of his experiment from the recently dead. This was not entirely fictional. The anatomy theatres of London and Edinburgh in the early 19th century were supplied by body snatchers, resurrection men, who dug up fresh graves and sold the corpses to medical schools for dissection. The demand for bodies was insatiable. Supply was illegal. The trade was brutal, corrupt, and widespread. The Murder Act of 1752 had made the bodies of executed murderers available for dissection, a punishment considered worse than hanging. When that supply proved insufficient, the resurrection men filled the gap. Families of the recently deceased paid to have graves watched. Iron cages called mort safes were built over burial plots to protect them. In Edinburgh, the situation produced something worse. In 1828, William Burke and William Hare, inspired by the financial opportunity, stopped waiting for people to die. They murdered 17 people and sold the bodies to the anatomist Robert Knox. Burke was hanged. His body was publicly dissected. His skeleton remains on display in Edinburgh to this day. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein a decade before Burke and Hare, but she was writing into a world where the commerce in human bodies was an open secret, where the boundary between medicine and grave robbery was thin, contested, and morally troubling. Victor Frankenstein's real crime is not creating a monster. It is treating human flesh as raw material. The horror of the novel is not what he made. It is what he was willing to do to make it. Darwin and the theory of life. There is one more piece of the puzzle. Erasmus Darwin, grandfather of Charles Darwin, was a physician, poet, and speculative scientist who had written about the possibility of spontaneous generation of life. Percy Shelley had read him. He and Mary discussed whether life could be created, whether the boundary between living matter and dead matter was as fixed as conventional science assumed. In the preface to Frankenstein, Mary Shelley mentions Darwin explicitly, citing his experiments with vermicelli, pasta left in water until it showed apparent signs of movement, as an example of the ideas circulating at the time. She is careful to note that Frankenstein is a fictional treatment, not a scientific proposal, but she is also, unmistakably, engaging with real scientific anxiety. The anxiety that the border between life and death might be crossable, and that those who crossed it might not be prepared for what was waiting on the other side. Mary Shelley was 19 years old. She had lost her mother at birth, lost her first child at 17 days old, and was living outside the bounds of conventional society by choice. She understood intimately what it meant to be responsible for a life, and what it cost when that responsibility was evaded. Victor Frankenstein abandons his creature the moment it opens its eyes. Everything that follows is the consequence of that abandonment. She was not writing about a monster. She was writing about a father. Subscribe to the margin notes, the real histories behind the books you think you know.